I think a lot of the stuff that trading taught me was how to handle losses and how to take risk, and not everything's a winner. And sometimes you just got to push through it and, put your big boy pants on and, know that you're making the decisions, and sometimes they're not always going to be right. So
welcome to the Kash and Dash Show, episode 314 with Brandon Tauber. Owen, you said it could never happen. You even questioned the moment before Brandon came in that he would even show up today. 5 years later, the moment is here.
I don't know what kind of a payment arrangement that you guys worked out, but I'm still in shock that he actually walked in this morning. This was
I assume the sale.
This was sitting on the calendar, and I'm like, there is zero chance this is going to happen. He's totally going to reschedule, but here he is.
I just wish we had 3 hours.
pallets of cash were delivered to my front door this morning.
All right, so Brandon and I have known each other for a while now. We've gotten multiple businesses, but you've been wanting to get him in here to tell the story. His
first time I ever met you is with Brandon.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we met at a coffee shop in old Blackstone area there.
We did?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
We had a meeting. You guys were just getting loaned, maybe, but you guys were just getting Red Ladder up and running.
Okay.
Yeah, I just meet you and Owen was there.
I do remember that.
So Brandon, you're from Northwest Indiana originally, about an hour outside Chicago, right?
35 minutes or so.
And played soccer in college with your brother, which is pretty cool. What was that like?
It was interesting because, we just played for a really high-level team and had a lot of good players on our team, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of it. And when you get around high-level athletes, it's interesting because they're just on a different competitive level than most people. So I took a lot away from it. There was a lot of hard work that went into it, but after 2 years, I was kind of out.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good experience, and glad I did it.
And you went to IU, right?
Went to Indiana
University
in Bloomington.
What did you go to school for?
So I went. I was in the business school there, which is pretty decent business school. And I graduated with an operations degree. So I liked manufacturing stuff, the processes that go along with it. And, from there, did an internship in California my junior year for Sun Microsystems and worked in a manufacturing plant there and just did supply chain stuff. And then
were you working for a consulting
business?
business?
So then my first job out of college was with Deloitte & Touche, and I did consulting for them, and but only lasted 18 months because the travel schedule was pretty intense. So
yeah,
I was kind of over going to the airport every Monday morning at that point after 18 months or 20 months or so.
Yeah, that's
especially the Chicago airport, right?
Yeah,
they grind. I mean, it's like being an associate at a law firm, right? They just grind you when you're new there.
And I was lucky enough to be on some pretty cool projects in good cities. A lot of the manufacturing people tend to go to smaller towns, which is just not where you want to be. So spent some time in D.C. and L.A. and stuff. So it was a good experience, but it's like the first job out of college. It doesn't last very long.
Yeah,
it seems like. So
what'd you get into after that? Now, you moved to Chicago at some point. When did that happen along the way?
I moved to Chicago after I graduated, which was 2002. Lived with my brother for a little while, and he was a finance guy, and he was involved in trading at the Board of Trade. And after seeing what he was doing and kind of getting burnt out from traveling, I decided to see if I could learn what he was doing at the Board of Trade, and ended up getting a job at his firm that he worked for there. And then I was there from 2003 or 4 until 2016. So 12, 13 years I traded up there with the same firm.
Now, when I very first went to your and then our office eventually, I remember walking in and you had, I believe, 6 monitors that were up, and you were looking at all of them all the time. Your eyes were just constantly moving.
Did you get headaches all the time from that?
Not really, because you're in your 20s when I started, so you're just kind of used to it. And nowadays, I'd probably have an aneurysm after a few days, but you just kind of get used to it after a while. And
well, okay, I know I've asked you this in the past, but what was it like after that? So you left that job, and we'll get into the reasons why and how you and I met and all that. But Did you have a hard time shutting down your brain after being so overstimulated with so much information all the time, where you just had a hard time turning it off?
Yeah, I was pretty burnt out towards the end, and I mean, you had small kids at home and stuff, so I was kind of ready for a break. So it wasn't that bad, especially after, like, if anyone's been in a job where they've kind of hated it for many years, it's almost like a relief to be done with it, and that's kind of how I felt at the end. But yeah, the 2016 election night was my towel in moment with trading. I knew I was done at that point, and went home. Got in bed at like 3 a.m, and I knocked my wife on the shoulder, and I'm like, I can't do this much longer. So it was, kind of a blessing in disguise that, I kind of knew that it's time to move on at that point.
But what happened that day that made it?
Number one, the market was really volatile because of the election, and then everyone was kind of surprised that Trump won, and I carried positions, and so positions were in my favor, and then they started going against me a little bit, and like I ended up doing fine that night, but lost a lot of money off of what I was up at one point, and I was just like, that's kind of for me.
I remember you and I talked for a while about, because I always thought it was a cool job. Like I messed around and lost money doing day trading just as an amateur, but I was always fascinated with it. And I remember you talking about kind of the evolution of trading went from, back in the early days, they had paper tickets and, they were trading on the trade room floor, to automation and Mike, what do they call them? The speed
algorithms.
All the algorithms and it's just so fast now. You'd be like, I'm literally glued to my computer, and I get up and go to the bathroom, and I lost $50,000 or something like that.
So it was really around 2007, 2008 during the financial crisis where algorithmic trading really started coming to the forefront, and it was just getting started at that point. And a lot of the guys I traded with we had a mouse in our hand, and it was point and click, and we'd see something and make a decision based off of what we were seeing in the markets. And then everything got really fast from that point on and kind of changed everything. And a lot of the firms at the Board of Trade went from hiring ex-athletes who were, competitive, can deal with stress, to hiring engineers from Stanford and MIT. So I was kind of out of my league at that point. But it was a good experience, and I wish I would have stopped earlier, but the way everything worked out, it turned out fine. So
now, when and how did you guys make the decision to move to Omaha from Chicago?
Yeah. So I met my wife in Bloomington. She's from Omaha, and
she went to college with you.
She went to college with me and met our senior year.
I went to high school with her.
Yep. And we lived downtown for 13 or 14 years, had all of our kids down there. And then I got to the point where I was, like I said, getting burnt out from my job, and, was looking to kind of make a move into something else. And I really didn't want to start over in Chicago. So I felt it was a good move for us to move to Omaha, which she wasn't exactly thrilled about because she had her life and her friends.
She escaped
in Omaha, or in Chicago. But, after thinking it through and talking it through, we're like, okay, our kids are just about to start school, and it was a good time for us to move. So
yeah, and you have 3 kids, right? How old are they now?
My son is 15, almost 16, and then twin girls that are 14, and so they'll be sophomore and freshman in high school next year.
Yeah.
So getting up there, and I know high school goes fast, so I'm trying to cherish the years that we have with them here, because I know that pretty soon they're all going to be gone. So it's a lot to think about.
Yeah. So. Well, let's talk about how you and I first met, and I want to hear your version of this.
This is a good story.
So just quickly, just how I got into real estate. The guy who ended up buying my townhouse in Chicago was a former trader. I knew of him, and he stopped trading a couple years before me and got into house flipping, and approached me as I was moving, and he's like, yo, you got to get into real estate. You'll really like it. It's a lot like trading. And I'm like, I can't think about that right now. I'm trying to move to another state and get my life settled. I'm like, maybe in a year or so I'll come back to it. And moved here and looked at a couple different businesses possibly to buy and operate myself. And
you were looking at like franchises, mainly?
Or just like small businesses around here that were mom and pop looking to sell type of stuff. And nothing really came to fruition. And then I was on a hike with my wife in California, and she's like, why don't you just try the real estate thing? She knew I was kind of desperate at that point, and I'm just like, fine, I'll try it. And so I got involved in a Home Investors franchise here, and I thought it was a good start for me just to learn from, the ground up, and had that franchise here for about a year, and then went on an appointment, and Owen was on the same appointment probably earlier than me. He bought the house. It was a hoarder house off of Lake Street here, like 73rd and Lake. And I thought I did everything right in trying to buy it, and Owen got it. And so, of course, me being competitive, I wasn't happy about it. But instead of kind of sulking about it, I looked up who Odd Properties was and found a number online. And
what an odd name!
And I called Owen out of the blue, which is like completely out of my personality. And like I said, I was just getting started, so I was looking to meet people and stuff. And then called Owen, and he took my call, and we talked and kept the conversation going a little bit. And next thing you know, you're in business for 8 years together and own multiple businesses. So it was kind of a crazy thing how one phone call to some stranger could end up being something.
How long did it take you guys to actually get that first business started? Do you guys kind of sample the water a little bit? Like, how do you guys do it?
We talked every day for a while. Like after that
Trading
first
secrets.
call, Brandon's basically like, how the hell did you buy that house for $20,000 or whatever? And I was just like, I just kind of told him my approach and everything. And we talked, and Brandon's a little more guarded about meeting new people. I would say not as trusting immediately as I am, which is good because it kind of buffers my enthusiasm a lot of times. But he was, kind of a little guarded at first and trying to feel me out, and I could tell that. But I was just like, yeah, here's what I did, and here's what I do, and then. We kind of, I don't remember how exactly we ended the call, but basically, he reached out again. I'm like, yeah, you can call anytime, man. I knew he was just getting started in it. And I'm like, I'll tell you everything, you need. And we just kept talking, and he'd call and ask questions, and we'd talk about deals and get opinions from each other. And then that was probably, 6 months-ish, 6-8 months. And then went out to lunch, we just started talking more, and we were like, he knew I was burned out in my job because I still had a W-2 at the time. And we were both kind of like in that point where we're like, this sucks. And we're going to look up, and we're going to be, 60 years old and wish we would have, done something about it.
Is this like 2018-ish?
Yeah, it was 2017, I think.
Okay.
20, yeah. And so anyway, that was kind of the origin story of that. And then, but I remember this because I don't think I had been to what became our office, but again, with the 6-monitor thing, I remember meeting him over there, and I think it was the first time I'd been there. And I walk in, and we had already made the decision to leave our jobs, right? We might have already actually resigned, or I did. And I'm waiting for him to hear back because he was kind of worried about, it was a franchise that he was signed up for, Home Investors is. So you have to buy a territory. They provide you the training and the support. That's the idea, but they take a big rake out of it, but as most franchise businesses do. But he was worried about a non-compete. And so I was waiting for him to just get confirmation that we were good to go. And I walk in, and the first thing he says to me, he's like, well, man, it looks like we're going to be competitors, not partners. And I'm like, are you serious? And he held on as long as he could before he started laughing. But that was, so he messed with me right off the bat with that. But then
I didn't know the punchline. I'm like, dude, is he messing with you?
Yeah. So he slow rolled me on that whole conversation. But
yeah, I was pretty fortunate when I had the Home Investors thing, and I was going to the old RIA meetings.
Yeah.
Just to try to meet people. And
when Andy was running them?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that, Colin was kind of just getting started then. And then I met Clint Bartlett, who is still a good friend of mine to this day. And I was probably a few months in, and Clint wasn't doing it very long either. So we kind of all came up together, I guess, in investing around here. So, they're all good guys that have, a ton of knowledge, and we still talk pretty frequently to this day. So I came up with some good ones, and then of course meeting Owen really helped push me along.
Yeah, I remember when we were first getting set up, and our whole business model basically was we were going to flip houses, see how that went, and then we were going to make a decision to, okay, do we want to start buying some rental properties together? right? To see if we had a viable business first, and then before we got into some long-term stuff. So we started, basically the model was we would market for leads. So we had, I put a website together, redesigned it, rebranded it, all that stuff. And then we were going to flip houses and just keep that machine going and, start acquiring assets eventually. So that's what we did. So I was in charge of marketing for the most part. So direct mail and the online stuff, pay-per-click, SEO, all of that. And we kind of just settled into I don't think we ever had clearly defined roles, like who was doing what. So we kind of just settled into what fit best for us. And mine's more of the, social and like the front end part of it. Brandon's really good at operations and kind of the back office stuff. It's not like you're not a good networker, but it's not like your wheelhouse. But that was kind of how we set the business up originally.
Do you feel that's a good recipe for a strong partnership?
I think so, because I think if you get two people together that are both strong at the same thing, then they're both wanting to do the same stuff, and then it leaves other things that aren't getting done. So I feel like it has to be well-rounded, not just one-sided. So
I was thinking about this the other day because now that we have been we were in that business, we started buying rentals, then it led into investing in other things, starting a new business. So we've done several different iterations of things. And I was thinking about this the other day. Like you hear horror stories about partnerships where things go sideways and you get into big disagreements, or there's just resentment that gets built up. And like I've never ever felt that with Brandon. So like I think it was just kind of a mutual respect thing, and then we each had our lanes. And the thing I liked most about him when we first met was he was a strong, family values, very involved in his kids, and you could just tell he had a good true north. He made the right decision. He did the right thing when nobody was watching. And we've had so many opportunities over the years to take advantage of situations and people that we just don't. And it's like you could do it and totally, you're not doing anything illegal, but you're totally taking advantage and pressing the situation on something. And that's what one thing I've always loved about him. That's why we always talk about what other businesses or things could we do, what can we do better, all those kind of things. So we didn't, having a kind of a mismatch in experience, because by the time we got into business together, I think I'd been investing, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And then, he had about a year with Homevestors before we got together. But you'd done several flips. I mean, you'd done probably a dozen or more.
I think so. And I made the same mistake a lot of people make initially, where I'd buy a house and every house had to be a rehab, and and that led to a really bad project that I had on my own that Owen actually had to help out with at the end. So I made those mistakes.
Was that the Blood House?
No, oh, okay. No, that was a house with a really bad foundation that I got ripped off by a couple contractors on, but just a learning experience that would probably cause a lot of people to pack their bags and go find something else to do.
That was a rough one.
But, we'll get into this later, but I think a lot of the stuff that trading taught me was how to handle losses and how to take risk, and not everything's a winner. And sometimes you just gotta push through it and put your big boy pants on and know that you're making the decisions, and sometimes they're not always going to be right. So I think that helped me a lot that first year, and I'm glad I did it on my own initially, because I learned a lot, and so I had a little bit of a baseline when I met Owen, and then we kind of took it to the next level at that point. So
how do you guys handle it when there's like a situation where like you penciled it out? And one partner is like, I don't feel good about this one. The other one's like dead set on getting it, but then it ends up being a complete flop.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you guys handle it internally?
I bought a house with Owen out of town one time, and it was probably the worst house we ever bought. And we ended up losing a lot of money on it. And, I felt bad about it because now I have a partner who's sharing in that loss. But we were doing so many at a time that, he was really good about it and said, just forget about it and move on. And so you have to share in the wins and losses together. It's not all winning. And anyone that tells you that, anyone that's online that's saying that on Instagram or whatever, they're full of shit.
Yeah.
And so you got to go through some tough periods, and that's business and anything that you do.
I think we talk more about the failures we have and the mistakes we make on this podcast. Probably gives us the most credibility. But I know that you also, he just talked about that one, but you had the one in Plattsmouth.
Oh man, yeah.
Was your big mistake?
Yeah, big mistake there. Yeah, and the reason being is like I mean I know what it's like to buy a crappy deal. Like you think you have something, and then it ends up being not at all what it is. Maybe you miss something big on a rehab, like something major. Like the one he's talking about is there was a lot of termite damage that was not easily visible, especially if you haven't looked at a lot of them. But I walked in, saw immediately, and it was so bad to the point where they were actually in the not the LVP, but the laminate flooring.
I think you've talked about this one.
Yeah. And it was really bad, and we lost money on that, but I lost as much or more on the deal you're talking about.
What was that situation?
That was a 10 unit in Plattsmouth, Nebraska, a smaller town outside of Omaha. And it was abandoned. It was a vacant building, and it had been for a couple of years. And I was like, the market was so hot at the time. I was like, there was a really motivated seller. They were basically trying to do what I then tried to do, which is more or less wholesale it. And I tried that, and it didn't work. And then the further we got into it, and the longer the time went along, I was like, this is bad. Because we could do the work, and everybody's asking me, why don't you do the work to it? But I'm like, I looked at the budget, and I'm like, we are going to be completely upside down, even worse than we would be if we just took the L and sold it as is. Mm-hmm. So we just took what we could get out of it and probably lost $40,000, maybe more with holding costs. So it was probably 40 or 50K loss. And I knew that because I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes all the time. Yeah. And I knew that it was just a matter of time before I was going to have one too. So it's like, don't beat yourself up over something you have. You're learning, and we knew that going in. So
was that the biggest loss you guys had?
I think the termite house was worse. But on that one, it was strange because, I met with some wholesalers over there that shall remain nameless, and the homeowners were there. Yeah. And I was a quote-unquote contractor. And so I couldn't really go through it the way I would if no one was there or it was empty. So...
because they're following you around, talking to you, distracting you. You can't look closely at things.
It was really rushed, and just one of those things where it happens one time, and you learn from your mistake and know that's not going to happen again. So, what do you think the first thing I look at now when I go into houses? Yeah. Floor joists, that sort of thing, and I'm making sure that there's not crumbling foundations and stuff like that.
Yeah, he touched.
I start from the basement and I go up.
Yeah, he touched the hot stove once, and now it's never going to happen again. But one side note about that, if I remember correctly, didn't the wholesaler that sold signed that deal to us make a crap ton of money?
I don't even remember.
Several tens of thousands of dollars. So we got worked on that one. Yeah, but that was a big L.
Well, I love these lost stories, but do you have any fun stories that you guys have had?
I don't even know where to go. We've had so many bizarre situations that have happened on deals we bought, crazy sellers. You got anything that's jumping?
What about crazy sellers? That'd be a good topic right there.
Crazy sellers.
Yeah.
Do you have any off the top of your head?
What about the 49th and Walnut whatever the address was over by Hy-Vee?
Yeah, he was the strangest guy that we dealt with. But it's
must have been a hoarder house.
Yeah, one of the worst ones.
Those always go to.
In this business, it's hard because you're dealing with houses that are in despair and people that are emotionally not there and
mentally not there,
and you realize that, but you still have to have empathy for them, and especially in this case. You didn't know this, the status of the guy, but you felt for him. And so if you want to take it from there and kind of what went on, it was a really bad hoarder house where you walk through the living room and the garbage was piled up to your shoulders. And there was a pathway to get to the kitchen, which was more garbage, and then raw sewage in the basement. But we had our clean out guys in there. And the guy was very protective of what was taken and thrown out versus what was kept for his new apartment. So, Owen.
Yeah. So, and again,
he observed everything going in the trash can.
This is for the. Please understand, people listening. We feel for the guy, but this is an example of kind of some crazy situations that we got into. This guy, so we had these clean out guys coming in, and there's a lot. There are multiple 40-yard dumpsters full of stuff, and he wants to keep everything. And he was so freaked out about people taking the wrong stuff that he physically laid down in front on a pile of trash. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I remember mice crawling over him while he's laying there out of the pile of trash that he just laid down on. He refused to move.
And he already bought the property.
Yeah.
So he's trespassing.
He refused to move because the clean out guys were wanting to get into that room and get the stuff out. And it was so tedious, that situation. We got movers lined up for him. I gave him a ride to I don't even remember where it was. Do you remember this?
I don't know, but
Like,
I can't believe you let him in your car.
he was wearing. I probably went over there. And I don't remember how many times you and I went together, but I know I at least was over there probably 8 or 9 times. And every time we went there, he was wearing the same thing, like not washed. Like, so it was, and he was living in a house that had a busted sewer pipe for 12 years. So there was a cesspool in the basement about, I would say, 12 to 15 feet across of just raw sewage sitting there. It was bad.
Yeah.
The smell. I mean, you got to imagine the smell.
I lived in a house that had that for like 2-3 years.
Oh, yeah, in the basement.
With feet of nastiness on there.
Yeah. So that was sad. I'm glad he got out of there. It was a terrible situation because he would have gotten sick or worse, and obviously didn't have a support system locally. So that was very sad, but also like obviously a funny story if you can remove the empathy from it.
Wow.
But that was pretty crazy.
And you guys came out okay on that one?
We wholetailed that one and did really well.
Yeah, really well. Our hoarder houses have always been our best profit.
Yeah.
Always. That's where the money is.
They always say it smells like money.
Yeah. But remember so he and I bought this house in Bellevue. And it was, so Bellevue, Nebraska's military base is their strategic air command. And there's a lot of veterans and so forth that live there. This is outside of Bellevue proper. So it's kind of in the country a little bit. And it's a cool property. It's on an acreage. It's on well and septic. This couple just wanted to move. They wanted to sell it as is, need a little work, not a ton. And we get it under contract for a good deal. And I skip this part. I should have known this because I grew up on a well and septic. And I'm looking, I'm like, hey, where's the well at, or where's the septic? And they're like, oh, it's over there. There's the leaching field. There's the thing. And I didn't ask about the well. And they're like, oh, they kind of, I think I did bring it up. And they're like, oh, it's somewhere. And I'm like, we'll figure it out later. So we close on it. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. And I still can't believe this. There was a cemetery about a mile down the road, and it was a small town cemetery it was really small, right? Like it was an old, probably 100-year-old cemetery. Long story short, they drilled the well for the house right smack dab in the middle of the cemetery.
What?
So the water coming into the house is from where all the dead bodies are.
Yeah.
And I'm flabbergasted. I didn't know what to do. So we get a hold of the cemetery board, and they were they were hardcore, dude. We had to drive out there and meet them at the thing. We had to get them to sign off on giving us an easement. We had to get a lawyer involved, spent probably $5,000 on legal just to get an easement so that we could actually, the homeowner, whoever bought the house from us, could go out and maintain it, repair it, whatever they needed to. And they fought us on it. I mean, we had to almost get it like an injunction. It was crazy. We ended up selling it, doing pretty well on it, but that was a crazy situation.
Yeah, I mean, well and septic is like, it would be like a no for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with them so much over the years that it's not that big of a deal.
It's like radiator heating.
But this one, I did not know how to handle. So it's like every deal we buy, not every deal, but a lot of the deals we buy, you would think after hundreds of deals that we've done, we'd seen everything. Never the case. There's always something where I'm like, I don't know what to do here. We got to put our heads together and figure it out. So
Brandon, how's it been for you now that you guys have turned off the faucet and the leads? Are you still working the leads? Like, what are you doing in that business?
So I'm kind of trying to flip some houses on my own, but it's tough to find good deals right now. So I'm coming across them every now and then, but like we still have some red ladder leads come in. We're buying a house here in 2 weeks.
That's from the residual marketing, or that's from the website?
Just from the website.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we're getting that one. And then I had one last week that fell through, but that was just a guy that we had already bought one house of, and he wanted to sell this one to us again because it was so easy, and he was moving out of town. So that one I think eventually will come back to us. He had another house that he was going to buy that kind of fell through. So, but that would be a good one too. So I mean, we're just trying whatever comes in and we could buy that's easy and we could sell pretty quickly is kind of what we're interested in. I think the days of big rehabs and stuff with what we have going on, it's kind of by the wayside. So,
and you're doing some projects with Clint now too, right?
I haven't done any with Clint, but we talk a lot and talk about marketing and stuff.
Okay.
So I haven't actually spoke to him in a couple weeks, but I think he's busier than I am.
So what all are you involved with right now?
So, God, what do I have going on? Liquid lending. I'm kind of helping Luke out. Luke Schulmeyer is and Angie Thiel, both of our employees. So just I do a lot of the day-to-day stuff with them and talk to a lot of attorneys and stuff like that, and I kind of oversee the operations, and Luke is kind of knee-deep in them, and he's done a really good job for us. So, I have that going on. That keeps me pretty busy. I have a big project in Field Club that I'm starting, which is like a full gut rehab of a house there that was
some nice houses in that area.
Probably the worst house that I've bought. It was full of mold, so it's a complete gut. And I had the mold mediators who were just out there today looking at it, and they have to get their stuff done before we could start putting it back together. So if I could find stuff like that, I do it. But like I said, I mean, you're not getting 10 or 15 leads a month anymore. So you're kind of just making hay with what you have.
I was shooting a show with Megan Ahern a couple weeks ago, and don't quote me on these numbers, but I thought she said she had 13 flips on the market.
Listed
that are keep on falling through, not getting done, in the Lincoln area. And then she told me she had another 20 of them under construction currently, and she was freaking out and she talked about this openly, so that's why I'm bringing it up. But
it's kind of weird because I had a flip earlier on this year in Bellevue that sold first day over asking. I think the market was kind of at the end of last year, beginning of this year was kind of heating up a little bit.
Rates were getting better.
Yeah,
you started feeling better.
I don't know how it's been recently, but I guess I'll tell you in 2 weeks when we get this other house up for sale, but I think it should sell pretty quickly. But definitely hear stories about stuff sitting around and the last 2 years or 2.5 years around here, I mean, it hasn't been easy for investors and people trying to sell their houses. So, it's a tough environment. I mean, it's a lot different than it was from, the zero interest rate environment to 2022. So you got to figure it out and adapt. Luckily here, the markets always seem to be pretty steady, which is a good thing. Not big swings one way or the other, but definitely days on market go up, and you got to kind of prepare yourself for that.
Well, one last thing is how are you guys adapting right now with the way that the rates have changed over the last couple of years, and how are you looking at properties differently? How are you assessing the numbers differently?
Definitely not being as aggressive as we once were. I mean, we were really good at finding spreads and what we thought we could buy it for X and sell it for X when the market was really hot. And now when it's not hot, you can't be as aggressive. So the wholetailing strategy has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit unless you get a really, really good deal on something. So, but it's also, there's so many other factors that go into it, just school districts, where the house is at. I mean, it all kind of factors in.
So you're looking at the neighbors a little bit more closely now, looking at the locations a little bit closely. You're probably bringing contractors in and actually check your numbers.
Yeah, well, that's something too. It's like the cost of everything has gone up so much. It's hard to, we could walk around and pretty much walk through a house and be like, that's a $25,000 rehab.
Window.
That's a $30,000 rehab, and we would be very close to that. I mean, with give or take $5,000 a lot of times, but it's toward the end when we decided to kind of shut down the marketing, because we had a few losses or stuff that didn't go well, that we were like, this is just, I don't the timing wasn't great for, and we were both getting busier with other things, and it was more, I think, on me than Brandon of I don't know if I want to keep marketing, and because it's a lot, man. When you have that many projects, we'll have, even if we're wholetailing it, we still have to do stuff to it. You have to get cleaners and do little work to it and things like that, and then manage the whole listing and offer and all that. And when you've got 15 of them going on at once, It's like you're just so jammed with all the information in your head that you're walking around at one time that you're just like, you know what I mean? You're just wired all the time. And that's a weird come down too. Like when you're used to flipping, 40 houses a year to not. But, like in my case, I'm involved in a lot of other things that aren't necessary, the podcast and like the meetup group and like all the social things that aren't necessarily revenue generators, but they're more like social capital and reputational capital building. It's weird. For me personally, it's been kind of a weird thing to kind of shut that off because it's almost like an absence of chaos leads to you being like, what is going on? So I don't know. It's just been it's been a little strange.
And for me, I think liquid lending has kind of filled some of that gap for me, just being involved as I am, just, because I like still looking at deals, seeing what people are doing. And I kind of get that a few times a week just from new loan requests and stuff. So it's a different perspective on things. And it's been definitely a fun business that we have going on.
And you guys kind of got it like a cheat because you do liquid lending. You're seeing the deals that are coming in. You know the prices that people are paying, and you also know what they're selling for. So that's got to really help with what you do in your strategy.
Yeah, it's almost like you get a peek behind the curtain of what's actually happening, and you see kind of the who's involved, what the budget was, and like what went well and what didn't. But yeah, so that has been. It's kind of like being a voyeur instead of participating in everything. But I do like that too, and I do like working with our borrowers that are making a lot of deals and making it happen. It's fun. And you don't have to do as much work. That's the fun part. Is like you underwrite it, you make decisions, the money goes out, and then you got to manage obviously the collections and so forth, but then you're pretty much done after that until it pays off. Unless there's problem payers or they're late or you got legal involvement, which we've had a ton of involvement with attorneys since we started liquid lending, like a lot.
Your attorney bill's been substantial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we I don't know what it is now, but I know we had like $5,000 or $6,000 retainer a month, just to have them at our beck and call when we needed help. But yeah, it's been definitely a fun business. We've seen some crazy stuff with that too. Yeah,
I wish you guys could just talk more about that but I know you're limited on legally what you can all talk about too.
Well, here I do want to call out something though. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you're good at identifying margin, and that's one thing that I would 100% agree with. And you and I very rarely disagree on what we think the value is, what we think the end value is. I think that's something that we have matched up almost lockstep the entire time we've been investing. And he's really good at it. And I think I'm really good at it too. But that helps a ton when you're underwriting deals that other people are doing and making decisions on lending. That helps so much. And having somebody be on the same page as you, I think, is one of the very first things that you should look into. Aside from somebody being a good person, they have high integrity, good morals, etc., good true north, and you have similar goals, you got to be on the same page about what you're making decisions on, because then it's just an uphill battle the whole time. If you're constantly butting heads on what you think values are, we should buy this, no, we shouldn't, that's probably a pretty good indication that you're not going to be a great partnership.
But also a partner that's just a yes man.
Yeah, you don't want that either.
You don't want that. You want somebody to actually question.
That's a good point. That's a good point. There's definitely a push-pull with it.
I mean, I had a partnership and everything was like, yes, whatever you say, you're right. And I'm like, no, I don't like this. I want you to question things. I want your opinion on things.
One thing we did too when we first set up liquid lending, we've got 4 partners, originally 5 and now 4. We basically made the decision in the beginning that we were either all in or all out on a deal. So if we got a loan request that came in, the decision we made was if Brandon saw something in that and didn't like it, then we don't do the deal. If I saw something, so on and so on, right? So we either all had to agree, and if we had one dissenter on that, we didn't do it. And I think that served us really well, because there's some, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if somebody's seeing something in that, there's probably a pretty good chance there's a higher level of risk.
And also, it's like, I think people are kind of flabbergasted that we have 4 partners in that business, where there's some other lenders around here that only have 1 or 2. But honestly, the 4 of us, have been in real estate a long time and have looked at a lot of deals that the more eyes that we get on some of this stuff, I think has helped us out. So kept us out of trouble in some situations. So
we've got such a unique mix of personalities and backgrounds on the team too. That's been, like, I don't think you could create that, but now that we see what we actually have, we've got, Chris has got a legal background. He was an attorney for a bunch of years. So he has kind of that mindset that he looks at things with from the legal perspective. Super helpful, especially when we're dealing with attorneys all the time, especially opposing attorneys. Like, he's just very good at that. Colin is just a bulldog and like brings in so much business and borrowers. Like, he networks like nobody else. Joins all these masterminds. I do a little bit of that as well on the front end. So I'm more on the business development side. Colin is as well. Whereas Brandon's so good at operations and making sure the train stays on the tracks. So it's just been a really good fit where we've kind of naturally settled into things we're best at and we actually enjoy doing. So I think that's a good,
important.
Yeah, it's a good, it's just a good foundation to build on. And sometimes you don't realize what you have until a couple of years go by, and then you're like, this ended up pretty good. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. Well, hey, what are you excited about right now? Anything that you're really geeking out about or interested in?
just kind of, keeping everything moving, trying to find some more deals. Obviously, I think that's what everyone's looking for at this point, but also like growing liquid lending, bigger than we have it now, and getting our operations better and making sure that everything's kind of firing on all cylinders. So, and the last few years have been tough. So I'm also looking forward to hopefully market improving. That's beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. I do want to bring something up. So with our business, like when you get into hard money lending or private lending, there's generally a couple of ways you can, or there's more than a couple of ways, but a lot of times people will just lend their own money. Maybe they have, retirement account, they sold a business, they just came into some money, they start loaning it out. And then there's another way where you can raise money and use bank financing and a combination of the three to kind of grow your business. So we've not slowly, we've basically doubled every year that we've been in business. But you get kind of to a point where it gets a little harder, because when you're raising capital from investors, if you're doing it correctly and you're pooling the money, you have to you have to file an SEC Reg D so that you can actively market it as a security, because it technically is. So you're raising money from investors, putting it into a fund. The challenge is, like, you get to a point where, we've been at various stages. So we'll get stuck at, say, a couple $1 million, and then it's, you get stuck at 5, and then you get stuck at 10, and then it's never a round number, but you get what I mean. And the interesting thing is, like, you'll be like, sweet, we're finally to $30 million for, investable capital, loanable capital. And then somebody will pull out $2 million because they have another deal they want to put it into. So now you're back down to 28. Then you raise a little bit more, and then it goes back down. So it's always like a couple steps forward, one step back when you're going. It's never linear. It's always got a little fits and starts to it. So it's been that's a challenging part of growth in this business. And then, you get to a point where, too, like, we've seen a lot of people pop up that have been competitors that weren't in existence before we did. And of course, we didn't invent the wheel here. We're basically copying what's been successful in other people's businesses. But there's been a lot of competition pop up, and there's, Omaha's about 1 million plus population-ish. But we've started to expand outside of our, hometown into different areas. And so that's been cool to meet people in different markets like Des Moines and Kansas City and kind of the surrounding states. But you don't necessarily have infrastructure there. So there's always stuff we're learning about that too, which is fun. I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I always like to have kind of like an outlet. And, so it just helps from getting bored easily.
So it's really interesting. Seems like you guys keep growing. Hopefully, at one point, you won't need the outside investors. You can just have your own money all pooled in there.
That'd be pretty sweet to make that much interest.
Get some real paychecks.
Yeah. But Omaha is unique, too, which we found surprising when we first started. It's completely normal here for, a lender to charge 18-19%. And people will take it all day because a lot of I say the handful of lenders that operate in this town, a lot of them will fund 100% of the purchase price, which isn't normal when you go outside of our market. And we found that out. Even Des Moines is a couple hours away, right? So you'd think it'd be same. They have similar pricing. They have similar, Midwest. They're probably half the size we are, maybe 3/4. But we're like, hey, they're like, what do you guys charge? And we're like, 18 or 19% or whatever it is at the time. And they're like, oh, my God, no, I'll never do that. That's like credit card interest. And you're like, okay, well, how about 2 points and 15%? And we're like, oh, yeah, well, we could do that. And I'm like, you do realize that the points make it much worse for you. And so that's the disconnect. So each market is different, and we've been kind of having to feel that out as we go. And you do research on each state to see what the regulations are. They're all different. You would think some states are really easy to operate in, like Arizona, but nope. You got to have a brick and mortar location. You got to be a licensed mortgage originator, like all these regs. So you got to stay on top of this stuff because it changes all the time too. New legislation will come out. So you have to learn and stay on top of things, and it's not a boring business at all. It's actually a lot of fun.
I agree.
Well, Brandon, I've been trying for 5 years to get you in here. I really appreciate it. Hope you come back so we can tell more of this. I think that once you see what we do here, it's pretty easy, right?
This is just a tease.
Yeah.
We'll get the
I'm
whole
usually
story.
a little gun shy, but I felt pretty comfortable over here on this side.
If we had old fashions, you'd feel so much
Yeah,
better.
that greases the wheel.
If I wasn't going at home to do stuff with my kids, I'd indulge.
I totally get it. But with that, Owen, we see us out.
On behalf of Aiden Bear and Ted Kaasch, I'm Owen Dashner, and been listening to Brandon Tauber, the former king of wholetailing. Signing off.